Oh, Mr. Trineri's gone on vacation, so I forgot about him. So let's, I guess we should do the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
United
States.
States of America, to the republic for which it stands, a nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
You were an echo, Cindy. There's a little delay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah. All right, our first item is Mr. Crocker has got an update on our budget process. And I'll let him share his screen and walk you through it.
Great. All right. Thank you, Mayor. Everyone present, I handed out a 3-page packet on budget tonight. So what I was hoping to do is first to cover 21-22, our current biennial budget. I have some amendments coming forward next week to council. So we'll walk through those amendments first, those proposed amendments. And then after that, we'll walk through the adjustments that we are proposing from the last budget you saw from the preliminary budget that will be incorporated into our final budget, and then just kind of briefly review the impact of those adjustments to the final budget. So the first budget amendments for 21-22, I want to call your attention to is in the general fund. We're increasing expenditure authority by $600,000. $500,000 of that is for a property purchase that could take place this year. We don't know. We're hopeful. It was approved at the last council meeting. So they're still negotiating, working through that process, but we need $500,000 from the general fund, as well as $500,000 from the storm operating fund. So you'll see those two amendments in here. The other $100,000 was for additional property purchases related to the Bay Street. Currently don't have enough money in our REIT 1 revenues to complete all the acquisitions. So we are budgeting $100,000 if needed to make and complete those acquisitions. Based on the information we had today, I don't think we'll use it or need it, but since this is proposed to be the last amendment before the end of the year, I'll make sure we have all the expenditure authority that we need to complete those acquisitions, if that could happen. The next one is the REIT fund. Again, this is to acquire the right-of-way purchases. I haven't pulled up my other screen.
We should close on Williams next week. Which is the last house.
And I'm covering this at a high level right now, but in the email I sent this evening, it's all detailed out and it will be detailed out for the amendment next week. Again, for our REIT funds, the two purchases we're increasing some transfers out to acquire right away for Bay Street, tip 1.1, amount of $816,000. We think that will get us through the acquisitions for the end of the year. So that's a transfer out there. And the other transfer is for $400,000 for our tip 1.2 Bay Street head path design work. And I believe there will be a contract coming forward next week as well. So this amendment will support that contract. I increased the revenues to support those additional expenditures. It's just really recording the actual revenues we received in the REIT fund. So going forward, once we push out the budget reports, our budget and actuals will be tighter, if you will. It'll be more in line. We won't have such a variant or actuals over budget. They'll be spot on because I'm amending the budget now to account for those revenues in order to then use those revenues to make these purchases.
No, just on the pathway project, I know we've got a federal grant. Once the federal government approves their budget for $1 million. So this 400 that you're putting into how much are you putting in for the Bay Street project? 400. But we will have a match element to that grant, but I think we have the ability to reimburse ourselves for expenditures we make ahead of getting the award. Would that not be true, Chris, or not?
So I'm trying to get caught up here. So we're using that for the pathway or for the road?
Bay Street roadway, the project in front of City Hall here from Geiger to Frederick. The $1 million money, the pot of dollars we got for design of that roadway.
Yeah.
And so Noah says you got a contract coming forward. And we're funding $400,000.
That's for the pathway to the east.
Oh, it's not the street. Okay, it's tip 1.2 is just the pathway design to the east, which is, you just need expenditure authority because that's grant funded from PSRC.
We're using city funds for design. We'll use the federal funds for construction.
We're not constructing east. It's a situational study.
It's the west is the situational study.
West is the situation.
West is the boulevard.
This is, okay, so this is the, I'm following you. This is the 100 to take us from our 90% design to 100% design. Okay, and now I'm tracking it. Okay. We have too many Bay Street projects. We got a Bay Street Road project. We've got the pathway east. This is the west, which is a situational study. This is the taking our 90% design to get it to an ad ready design. Okay, I got it.
Okay, good. That would clarify that. Okay, so move on to the next fund, 302, our capital construction fund. Again, we intend on purchasing property here. So we're gonna make that purchase out of our capital construction fund. So you'll see, $500,000 go in, $500,000 go out. No impact to the fund overall. It's just transfer in and purchase. So we complete that this year. The street fund, again, we're just making the transfers into the fund for the property purchases for the Bay Street right away. Again, for the tip 1.2, that 90% to 100% design construction work or design work to begin. And so that's all you see is that you have the money coming in and it's going to keep going out. So since this is the last budget amendment of the year, we always check our funds to make sure we have enough capacity in all the funds. And so far we're doing fine, but they start to get tight towards this time of year. So then we scrub them over at the GO level and just do some forecasts on the salaries, benefits, and make sure we have enough expenditure authority to close out the year. So I'm proposing some amendments for our water utility fund, as where there are certain things.
So no, could you render this on the screen, the second page of the blue document with the blue header on it? So Cindy and
Go to this grant there.
you got it described here. You want to, okay, is this better detail versus?
Yeah, that's better detail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
The other one shows the impacts on the fund, so that's helpful too.
Okay, but that's the detail.
It is at the detail, yeah.
All right.
Why?
Yeah, this is the why, which is really important.
Okay, there it is. Yeah.
So yeah, for our water utility, when we scrubbed it over, it looked like we're gonna be tight on salaries. There were additional water projects that we performed this year than we anticipated. We had on-call contracts that, were on call, so we didn't have a number. But, looking back, bringing the budget more for that. State utility tax, again, that came in higher than expected because we had rate revenue go up and more rates coming in, so we just had to pay more money to the state. And then on the expense side, meter purchases were larger than expected, and as Tony agreed, that's due to development. So that exceeded our budget authority. So I'm proposing $526,000 to get us through the remainder of the year. And we're just going to pull that from our ending fund balance, which would leave us about $1.7 million to close the year, which is still on track for all our policies. So nothing concerning there, just kind of what's the plan. Again, it's really about expenditure authority, make sure that we can close the year. Water.
So I guess it's an assumption on my part that this will give you the authority, but by the end of the year, you're not obviously gonna spend it, so.
Correct, yeah. Ideally, give us authority and we can come in less than our budget.
Yeah, no, I know this is just budget authority is essentially what we're talking about with these transfers.
Yeah, with everything proposed,
Yeah.
just monitoring, sure, because I won't have an opportunity to.
Better to have too much and not enough when it comes to the end of the year.
Yeah, because and again, we have that 20 days in January, so that 13th month,
Yeah.
we're climbing all those invoices back and don't want any surprises.
And it's things like those water meters, the developer buys that, just, from us, but then our utility has to buy them.
I was
Have
gonna
them
say, we have
stock,
to run it.
and then they buy them from us and when they hook them up, when they build the house.
This was the first purchase for water meters to council because it was above the threshold.
Similarly, story with the water capital, again, we have agreed with developers. And so as they come in and pay their CFCs, some of that money is due back as a reimbursement to some of our developers. So again, because of the building activity, The budget amounts we put in there were just a lot lower than we've actually received, so bump that up to ensure we have enough ability to pay our developers their reimbursements per the agreements. And so you'll see that $100,000 move from 413, our capital fund, to our debt service fund. Get transfer in, transfer out. Pretty straightforward. The other operating fund is the storm drainage fund. A couple of the proposals in here are due to the downtown stormwater plan, which is a grant funded project. But that significant, it was like $150,000 that we did not have an expenditure authority. So I'm bringing in both some revenue for that, as well as recognizing where we're at with that project on the plan itself. Legal services and other operational expenses just were higher than anticipated. So I think $306,000 on the operating side will get us there. This gives us enough capacity to close out the year. And then this is where you can see that additional $500,000 moving from the storm operating fund to the storm capital fund for the purchase of property. So we can close that out this year. And then that's what you see in the storm capital fund is money coming in, money going out for the expenditure. So you have this detail. This is for 21, 22. Over the next 2-3 days before Tuesday, I'm gonna scrub it over again, especially because we're gonna do another AP run, just to make sure that I didn't miss anything or some invoice didn't show up that we weren't anticipating. So I don't anticipate any changes for 21, 22. I think this should close out the year. But if something does come forward, I'll make that you all aware of that next week when we talk.
When you say things like increased revenue, you're really saying that due to the forecast, the revenue is going to be higher.
What that means is we've budgeted a certain number for revenue, say 100,000. And in order to help pay for these expenses, I'm doing two things. I'm identifying how much revenue we have received. So in one circumstance, we budgeted 100, but we've actually received 125. So I'm just increasing our budget on the revenue up to 125, really reflecting what we have received. And now I can use that $25,000 to pay for the expenditure, that increase in the budget there.
So Mary, just, I understand what we're doing, how we're doing, sounds great. But if something extraordinary came up, we still have 2 business meetings in December. If something came up.
Yes, but Noah does a lot of work on the back end
Oh, no.
to do a budget amendment. So it's really our
Yeah.
intent that this is our last budget amendment of the year. Because we get into holidays, and then December, where our 2 meetings are compressed to the beginning of the month.
Right, no, I'm just saying is if this is great, I mean, plan wise and stuff like that, I was just saying that something extraordinary came up, it wasn't like, we could do something if we had to.
Yeah, worst case scenario, we can call a special meeting December 31st.
Right, yeah, okay, yeah. No,
That is the worst case.
That is, yeah, I understand that, and I understand what you were saying, John, earlier about the fact that this is authority.
Yeah.
And if we don't spend it, it moves
We don't need
forward, and it's not bad. No, this is great.
He's got it, so.
Yeah, no, this is great. So I got it, I just want to make sure I wasn't missing.
No, you're tracking really well. So if there's another question on 21, 22, we can move on to 23 and 24. So again, I emailed it all out, but I'm going to focus on this one page right here, the blue page, which were our adjustments that we're proposing from the last budget you saw. And so I'm just going to kind of walk through the couple funds here and talk about why again. So for our general fund, after we talked and met, the assessor's office let us know that we had a reduction in property tax revenue. Again, that was due to our multifamily tax exemption. We talked about this before, there was $18 million exempt off the books after we had kind of planned what the property tax revenue was going to be. That was all factored into our property tax ordinance. So when we adopted the correct amount. We'd already talked about budget as our built into here. So I'm just reducing our property tax to adjust for that, both in our general fund as well as our street fund. The other expenditure that came in was AWC, came in much higher than we had budgeted. I think I'm increasing about $200,000 over the biennium. So you'll see AWC throughout this budget amendment to reflect the higher AWC costs. So for the general fund, so now
When he says that, this is our risk insurance, our property and casualty insurance. The pool has seen a number of significant claims. And so it's being shared in higher premiums to all the members of the pool.
So you're spreading it out on all the different funds.
Correct.
Yes, we always allocate the insurance based on the property.
Right.
That appropriately goes to, some of it's real property, the buildings. Shop, so then when it hits those particular assets, we allocate it based on the asset value and the cost of that insurance to the various funds. And so that's where you'll see it hit all the enterprise funds as well as our general fund. So yeah, a reduction of revenue and an increase in cost, using fund balance to pay for that. So a reduction of $120,000 in fund balance there. And I will go to the next comparison. Will show the actual impact of the fund. So that'll be the next slide. So let's get through this first and then I'll show the impact. Again, on our street fund, again, property tax went down, insurance went up. The other thing we did is we identified some expenses that were for capital projects that were originally budgeted in our street operatorship fund. So I'm moving those expenses from our 002 fund to our 304 fund. So in this case, you actually see a reduction of expenses by 95,000. And the end result is our ending fund balance is going to increase. The net effect of all these adjustments. As I understand it, the council had a discussion last week and is supportive of the LTAX committee's recommendation of 123,000 roughly of contracts. So I've increased both the hotel and motel revenue as well as the expenditure authority. And the hotel and motel revenue back historically can support the $123,000. So that's fine. So you'll see no effect on any fund balance. We'll increase revenue, increase the expenditures consistent with that. The next couple for Fund 111 is our impact fee fund. In particular, we've got two additions here for our transportations. We identified one project that was not included in our original preliminary budget, the Old Clifton non-motorized project. And then we had some additional costs for Pottery Road for survey work and design. And Mayor, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what the Old Clifton project is.
Old Clifton project, I believe, is the multimodal pathway along the edge of Clifton, and the Pottery Road 1.15 is the road diet in front of Cedar Heights. So the Pottery Road project is grant funded. The other is us getting our designs far advancing our designs as we applied for other grants. It hasn't fared very well in the grant realm, and sometimes if you show a prettier picture and you're farther along in your process versus getting the, fare better if the grant's the last dollar in versus the first dollar in. So that's kind of where we're grinding to advance these projects.
And this project tip 1.58 for Old Clifton, we do have that budget in our current biennium, so we had planned on getting to that work this year. We just didn't get to it, so it's almost a reappropriation in the budget, just at a slightly lower dollar amount based on estimates. So again, with our impact fee fund 111, we're just reducing fund balance because it's not operational fund. Revenues come in and money goes out to the appropriate capital funds to support those projects. Now you see the transfers coming in our fund 304. Again, to get revenue coming in, we recently were awarded a highway safety grant. And so Chris had just made me aware of that again after the preliminary budget. So we're recording those additional $220,000 of revenue as well as additional $220,000 of expenditures we expect. And so overall, the fund 304 has a reduction of $135,000 once we net these additional expenditures. The next three funds have pretty much the same story. AWC, insurance, its allocation, so increasing expenses, reducing fund balance for 411. 421 actually missed the state utility tax when we looked it over again, just wasn't budgeted. So I'm trying to bring that in because we will have to pay that to the state. AWC, expenses up, fund balance down. The same thing for our 431 fund. Those are all the adjustments that are going to be factored into our final budget. And again, I sent you all the email that has this document, and that's really hard to see up here, so it might be easier in the paper. But overall, the addition is that we're increasing revenue by roughly $376,000, in total increasing expenses by about $900,000, and paying for most of that fund balance. So again, I broke down by fund, how that impacted. Let's get some of those adjustments. Again, I'll mention what was important as we kind of went through these adjustments, is that as we looked at the annual fund balance targets, it still stays within our fiscal policies. So all real positive. That's why I felt comfortable, using the fund balance to balance out those expenditures.
This is just gonna bring it in line with what we know to do.
This is bringing it in line with what we know as of today. Literally as of today. Maybe change the other. So.
And you guys all saw that, I think it was shared with everybody, not just the finance committee, the financials came in last week, once again, strong. And so we truly took those dollars and truly that up in this process too.
Cool.
The only the last document I wanted to just briefly go through, because we did a quick tour. I think it's easier to see at a high level. Oh man, let's see if it's frozen. Well, it was going to be our 23-24 capital budget. I just simplified. It is in your email. Again, you'll see a couple of projects.
There you go.
They stay. There. So the grand total went up. Our capital construction for our 302 fund did not change. But our capital construction for our street fund did increase. All the other funds stayed the same. So I just want to point out a couple of projects that did change. Not for 302, because again, 302, students saw before. This is no change. But for our 304, again, I mentioned 1.58 Old Clifton Road design work, $150,000 increase there. The other one was the highway safety street light improvements, $220,000 there. And then we did budget additional $95,000 for surveying and on-call work related to these projects. So we found that sometimes we need some surveying work, and I just hadn't built it into every single capital project. So I had a little placeholder for that for the buy.
So the survey is generally required for the capital project, so.
Yep. So I just want to point that out that A, you have the information there for you. If you have questions on the capital program that we're putting forth. Again, we spent quite a bit of time going through all these funds. Nice from Stuart Lake. But the overall impact is roughly a $40 million capital budget.
Just thinking about it.
Just thinking about not responding. Just thinking about. So that was all I had for 21-22, as well as 23-24. And again, want to give council an opportunity to comment, make adjustments. We've got 1 week before adoption next Tuesday. And then I'll roll out similar assortment of documents and the ordinances to support it for consideration next Tuesday.
So the plan is that we would adopt it.
Got a few more meetings after that.
Well, get it done before
We would hope to get it done.
we're December, then pressure's off.
It's all tracking, just as when we started out with finance and the budget. Good work.
Good.
Okay, thank you, Noah.
Thanks, Bill.
Stick around for the whole presentation, or you can get the road to Olympia if you'd like. Good call.
Captivating. I've
I
gone
know.
through it already.
Yeah,
So
I've been waiting for this MBA for your position quite a while.
About 4 years.
There will be an impact on the budget.
No, there is.
That's right.
That's the crazy thing is, it's just capturing what we're doing.
No, I mean, yeah, over time.
Yeah. So we're on to item 2, which is road paving update. So Chris is going to give us an update on what we've been doing with paving our streets and where we're headed.
Okay, here's the intro here. For the production here. I'm going to start out here. This is a map that shows the hierarchy of our streets. So for those that are retired road network here, so we have I've identified our principal arterials, our minor arterials, our collectors, local access streets, most of the streets shown in green. That hierarchy is important to us because the roads that break down fastest are the higher order streets. Typically, they get the most traffic, truck traffic. The other interesting thing about this slide is the roads that are shaded in green are the ones where we completed work, and the ones that are shaded in red are the ones we're planning work in the next biennium.
Now, when you say completed work, that could be anything from crack sealing to overlays, and everything in between.
Yeah, and it's a compilation of things too. So it's the work we're contracting out for citywide pavement repair project. It's the work our operations and maintenance crews are doing. It could be related to a construction project like Lippert as well. So it's all that captures all that stuff.
Those streets we touched. To some degree.
That's my point. I mean, when you look at the green, it's pretty impressive. That's a lot of the streets in the city, but in reality, some of our touch on some of those is the crack sealing. Not to minimize it, it's just.
And that's true too. What we're trying to do is get ahead of. We're trying to use less expensive treatments and be more proactive, so we don't let our roadways deteriorate into conditions that require more expensive repairs as well. So it's one of the hallmarks of a good pavement management program. If you drive around the city and you look at all the arterial streets and collector streets, you expect to see that they have the lesser crack sealing, a few patches here and there, and that kind of stuff, like the deterioration of those roadways. And then, lastly, just is kind of as you touched on there. You can see that within this 4-year period, we'll have addressed a large portion of those major roadways, the arterials, the collectors. A lot of touches throughout the network on those. And I feel kind of my sense of things is that we did the pavement management work back in 2016 with the report. There were a number of years we didn't do a whole lot of work than what operations is doing on a regular basis. And so with the last biennium and this biennium, I think we're pretty much set the floor on the deterioration of our overall pavement condition index. It's come down a little bit. And I hope that not this next coming biennium, but biennium of that, I would expect to see that start to increase again over time if we continue to expend the level of expenditures we've been doing.
Just to
By increase, you mean improve.
historically, we would cobble together $200,000 in a biennium to pave our streets, and with that 1 year that Mayor dollars in Bethel, remember, but other than that, $200,000 was a significant investment to our streets.
That was just Mill and Phil's.
Correct. It was $1 million for Mill and Phil's. We did pave from Lund Bridge to Bethel. That was a complete overlay. And this past biennium and this biennium, we got $1 million, and we're well north of $1 million in this biennium. And I think that really needs to be the floor for our spending or more to, as Chris is saying, we've, got some Band-Aids on stuff, and now it's time to start, elevating our game and improving the condition and not just maintaining the status quo. That's our goal.
So as I touched on just previously, we have a kind of a mix of things going on. We've got the work with the contract out, and this is saying here is a full with repair here, but we'll do. Hopefully, we're looking forward to doing some overlays. So we did a lot of grind and patch here this last year throughout our network, a lot of crack sealing, some sidewalk repairs contracted out. And then the work by our crews, we're really trying to focus on our crack sealing efforts. We get a lot of bang for the buck there. We're out there and pavement repair. Their equipment is not quite as large for doing, a lot of grind and patch, but we do some of that too. And of course, then the other thing we're doing is we're responding to pothole filling, which is, I think we get out there and do that. Yeah. So one way to gauge the level of effort here is the budget. So this is the past biennium. We did some pavement repair work in association with the sewer repair project on Sydney. We're just now hopefully wrapping up this week, the overlay on the project starting tomorrow. See the whole expenditure there. And we had our citywide asphalt repair project we completed early this year as well. So we're spending about $1.47 million last biennium. And in addition to that, we have the materials budget for the maintenance crews that they're materials down on our roadways. It's pretty much the same level for the next biennium. Continue to do, take care of our backlog or reconstructs like we did with Lippert, but with Pottery now we're including as we go forward with that wonderful Complete Streets project that we're doing there. The safe grant will also take care of the road repairs at the same time. That's a very efficient approach to pull that into one project. We'll continue to contract out the road and the citywide road repairs and some sidewalk repairs will be rolled into the Pottery project as well. City budget is before.
So Chris, the APE or area of effect, potential effect is from Berry Lake to Lippert on that road diet.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so and so we've got a grant we're gonna be able to put the road on the 4-lane portion for the school down to 2 lanes, improve bike lanes through there. And then we're gonna contribute some of our paving dollars to overlay the rest of that street. Because the project's gonna do things to the shoulder and where we put the road on a diet. But that, if you've driven that road in a while, it's in pretty bad shape. So we wanted to be able to do the travel roadway in that segment. So we basically got a brand new street from Lippert all the way down to Berry Lake Road.
And the other aspect of that is we want to make sure that we don't have any utility work coming up that we're not providing for. So we've allocated some money in our water and sewer utility to do some of the work associated with that project too.
Thank you. I noticed the locate on Tremont there just by the,
And we've got 2 sinkholes on Tremont.
So we have some water utility work to do right where Tremont left off there. We had the end of the APE for that project, which we couldn't go for. Mark wanted to do that, but then there's all this federal permitting and things associated with that. So we'll pick up where that left off and then also provide for the future force main there. Side of the south.
I know this came up last week and just wanted to confirm. They talked about there be a flashing light in front of Cedar.
So, yeah, the RRFBs, rapid flashing beacons, were including those one at the mid-block crossing in front of the middle school there, and then 2 at the elementary school.
Thank you.
That's at the point we do that project, and it looks good for us. We all know. I wish I had a little bit better information going into the beginning of December here, but we scored well for the Safe Routes to School project in front of the elementary school. And we also scored well for the bike ped program out for Tremont 2 and 3. So I'm hoping to have some good news here going into the end of the year. Great. All right, here's just some examples of the treatments we typically use. We did a lot of grind and patch this last year, and that's shown at the top. I'm hoping to do some chip seals in the next biennium as well as some overlays. Oh, the other exciting news I hope to bring back here in the beginning of November is we did submit for a state funding for an overlay out of Clifton. So there's a possibility we'll consider $500,000 coming to our coffers for that. That looks favorable as well. So hopefully an overlay here in the near future as well. And then again, we're trying to emphasize the crack sealing out there ahead of things.
It's set up well for an overlay now. We did the crack sealing. We did the worst of the potholes, so it's not like we're gonna have to go in and grind out the whole roadway like we've done with Lippert. It's, it's prepped to a certain extent for an overlay.
Yeah. So it's a good timing. Get that overlay down before we have other patching needs. And then the other interesting thing was that the TIB is now making that a criteria that if you've done, not in this current round, but in the future rounds, if you've done the preparation ahead of time, they'll you'll qualify for more points. So if we don't get this round, then hopefully we'll better set up next time. All right, well, that's the end of the presentation here.
And then you're in the next one too, which is the much anticipated ADA transition plan update. No, I mean, Noah delayed his departure.
4 years for this.
Second.
So we can mark this off of our project.
That's been on the to-do list for a while, to get in front of council, so.
You know, we're fixing sidewalks and developers are funding a lion's share of our new sidewalks out there. And then we're doing some work, the city road project, sewer project allowed us to do some work and you know, we pick up onesie twosies here as Tony said. Staff has time, so.
Yeah, the requests or complaints come in, we'll address it right away.
You know, it was really weird. I can't remember what town I was in. I remember taking a picture of it. But it was like they had, it was a four-corner, street intersection. And like they had two other sidewalks had the ADA, ramp, and the other two didn't. And it was like, so what are you supposed to do? Leave one,
They're
get to
probably
the other
taking order
one?
from each other.
And it was just weird. Cause yeah, they were diagonal, so
Yeah.
you wouldn't go that way, but if you went this way, you'd have to get up and over a curb. And I couldn't figure this out. It's like, wait a minute, this makes no sense.
So wheelchair users would have to go
Diagonally,
diagonally across an intersection versus doing.
Yeah, I couldn't do it.
And that's
It's weird.
Interesting.
that's really what added to the scope on the city road project and the sidewalks that we did up towards the park is. We didn't want those situations, so we did all four corners
Right.
versus just,
I knew I've been doing that. And
Yeah.
it was just, I was dumbfounded. Sorry.
Try to avoid that.
Yeah.
Take care of those kind of situations we have, so we implement our ADA transition plan. So a little bit of history. So we did our original ADA transition plan back in 2016. That was a consultant effort with Transportation Solutions Incorporated.
It's not showing.
Oh,
I stopped it while you were looking around on your drive.
oh, thank you. So I got to figure out how to share. Is that better?
in there we go.
Okay. And what we did, so it'd been 5 years since we did the original study. So we want to take another look at, what's changed and what's accomplished. And so we did more of a limited update. I decided that, well, we really hadn't done a whole lot of this stuff and we want to spend the money we do have on implementation more than doing the study. So we took that on the staff to write the draft of the update ourselves. And then I did hire, we had an on-call with the same firm, so they were able to do peer review for us, but that was just a small amount of money, so.
Do you want to put that in a slideshow, both Erica, so that we can close your screen up?
Oh.
Slide shows about 1, 2, 3, 4, 6.
I was looking at that. Sorry, I didn't get that right away. That's much better, yeah, thank you. So the goals of the limited upgrade were just to document the progress. That the study has a lot of maps that show, where all the deficiencies are throughout the system. So we have all those maps, create some new ones that show the work that's been done, progress that's involved. And for all the retrofits and sidewalk gap infills and extensions, and that kind of stuff. And again, it was a staff effort in trying to focus our dollars on construction. And this is this is appendix B. It's in the and one of the maps that shows what this shows is the new sidewalks that have been constructed in the city or reconstructed. And so a big chunk of that was the Tremont project in the past 5 years. Also, you can see the areas, especially on the west side of the city, where new neighborhoods have been developed. Of course, that comes with all the sidewalks as those are developed. as the city grows, we have more things to take care of. And here's some examples of some of the neighborhoods with the ADA ramps, crossings.
I didn't see the Sydney Road project on your map.
It's coming up.
Okay. Sydney Avenue.
Yeah. I guess there weren't really so much new sidewalks as it was retrofit.
Retrofitting ramps. So that's new sidewalks on your map, not
Yes.
retrofitting ramps.
Yeah.
Unimproved.
And this indicates it's from 2016 and 2020.
That's great.
Right, so we'll capture Lippert.
Chris had this ready like 6 months ago. We look at the work study. That can wait. We kept finding.
And then we, as far as ADA ramps, see that we've got, over the years here, we've addressed a number of those. We've as far as the efficiency for ramps, we've been able to improve 39 locations. A subset of that is 4 of the 11 of the fully non-compliant ones we were able to address. And then also of significance on Tremont is the push buttons for the pedestrian crossings were upgraded to current standards of audible, all that kind of stuff.
So Chris, this was 39 we've done to date. How many non-compliant ramps do we have out there?
Good question.
400 or 500?
I'd have to refer back to the original study.
So all of these black squares are those that need ramps or ADA.
Yeah, they're not fully compliant to the current standards.
So clearly there's a lot more black dots than there are color.
That's why, and I could be.
Pretty good estimate.
I bet it's 200 or 300 at least.
And fire in the new neighborhoods though. Or newer neighborhoods.
Say the McCormick Woods ones, those are all wide shoulders, there's not even sidewalks there.
Yeah. I'm not
So
sure.
there
That is
should be
There
curious.
shouldn't be any on
Yeah.
McCormick Woods.
It could be that they're just, those are places that are crossings that would normally have
Okay.
sidewalks and they don't.
Need markings of some sort. Could be paint.
But when you say ADA compliant, that suggests something more than ADA ramp.
Yeah, so we're looking at, does it meet our current standard or not? So there could be a lot of situations where there's, this is slide specific to ramps.
We should investigate that McCormick area.
Yeah.
Because there's no sidewalks out there. So,
Maybe these are just intersections and not.
They all enter, I mean, they're all flat.
yeah, what is it, anyway, we should investigate.
Something for me to
Define
look
what
into.
that means, so.
Yes, that may not be accurate.
So here's what some examples at, and an example I used was the Sydney work. that we did.
Right.
This is up now.
Yeah, so, you know, over on the right here, we have Kitsap and Sydney Avenue. Corners of the intersection with new ramps. And then Rio.
Was that down to Sydney, Kitsap, was it done as part of the sewer?
Took that opportunity to make those upgrades.
Up there on DeKalb, on the north side of the street, we were missing a second sidewalk. There was an unopened piece of right of way there, and it just didn't have sidewalk, so. And it's heading up to a park, so. we took the
It's
opportunity.
kind of our top missile attractor. We got. So
Those complainers are gone. They were people going to that church.
oh,
That church is standard.
Still, and everything,
Still, it's a big improvement.
but we, you know, we do listen to the comments we receive. And we have limited ability to, can't do all, so we have to absolutely prioritize this.
got a contractor mobilized in the area, so why not?
And then also, and it not only ramps, but it, you know, one of my pet peeves is these driveways that have the kind of undulated thing that comes along, and you know that, of course, they don't work at all for people with assisted devices, so. Kind of retract those as well. And most of those that were addressed actually were on the Tremont the Tremont project is concluded. So here's an example of that. Here's the, on the right, the photo shows the kind of the ideal situation, away from intersections where the driveway, the cars actually come up to the sidewalk level and the sidewalk stays at the same elevation. You can strip, so. All right, so as far as plan work, we have $35,000 a year in the operating budget to do some sidewalk repairs. Most of the things we're doing they're associated, like we talked about with other projects, with Lippert, with Pottery. We've been out trying to find ways to pay for sidewalk repairs and ADA retrofits. Receive a community development block grant through a program, $250,000 that help pay for sidewalk extension on Lippert and the ADA ramp repairs there. And then we received that Complete Streets grant state for $650,000. It's allowing us to move that project.
Chris, will we pick up that Sunset to wherever South Kitsap Boulevard section in our Complete Street project too?
We're gonna pick up where Tremont left off.
Okay, I'm gonna grab that little
There's
section.
less work that's happening outside of the road diet with 4 lanes, but still we're addressing the complete corridor where Tremont left off all the way down to Berry Lake. So we'll have bike lanes and sidewalks on both sides.
Mayor, I knew you had at the tip of your tongue one time several years ago about how much it costs to do the ADA retrofit redoing intersection. I mean, it wasn't inexpensive.
Yeah. Chris would have a better idea off the top of his head. And I remember, because it was, we took something out the bid and we were like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I think it was this intersection over here, Kitsap and Klein, and
Yeah, I mean, usually like when from an intersection with a ramp, that's gonna be $4,000.
That's what I thought, yeah.
$20,000 an intersection. Corners on it. Funny, sometimes we do an intersection, sometimes it's, as Tony points out, we get a complaint about, broken sidewalk or ramp, and so we go out and fix, those trip hazards out there and make them, make them compliant as we deal with them in onesie twosies.
Yeah, we're considering, they have contractors out there to actually do an assessment on, say, downtown. We have an emergency management sector and have them do trip hazard assessment. Did come in, use those grind, whether they can grind them down, if they can't, then they'll identify those ones and we can repair. Actually, sector, and be strategic about it over the course of 5 years, sure, it's 5 or 6 sectors. They could do one biennial or 1 a year. So I think downtown will be very important to do that.
That's been really cost effective for other agencies, and it's really doesn't take a lot of time to manage that kind of effort either. So it's a really easy one.
They've got specialized equipment for those grinding, to grind those pumps and do it all day long. So they come in and assess and give us a work plan.
So we're going to continue to apply for the community development block grant program. We've been unsuccessful the last couple of tries, but I've got designs on doing ADA retrofits near transit routes and kind of the low mod areas of the city, up on Olney and then also on Kitsap. So hopefully on Sydney Avenue. So hopefully we'll be able to get that funding and continue to roll out. All right, our goal is to get one of these kind of reconstruct / sidewalk repair projects that involves that every year going forward. And then, of course, like we talked about with Tony suggested, city crews will do some work as well. And then as we have other work with the pavement preservation program, we'll have to pick up the ramps that are associated with that work, the ones that are non compliant as well. So it's kind of our plan going forward. And here's some examples from the Lippert project. On the left there, that's the sidewalk extension, earlier construction on that. Some of the details with getting the ramps grades right, you have to all the slopes right. That's a little tricky, so we spent time making sure we stay ahead of the contractor to have them reconstruct things. And then here's the left, here's that sidewalk extension in before we go to the road, and then that same location again with the ramps that were, I showed you what the level was and that kind of stuff. At that mid block location next to the bus stop there. And then some of the action that's going down in preparation for the overlay, which should be taking place tomorrow.
Had great weather for it. It's amazing. This time of year.
Right.
It's squeaking it in. We get
It
to
had to be 50 degrees and rising.
Yeah.
from mid-November through, like March, it tends to be either too cold and you for an overlay, or it's wet.
Yeah.
Hard to find those days where you can squeeze it in.
We hope it happens tomorrow. If it doesn't happen tomorrow.
May not happen tomorrow.
It may not happen until spring, because we don't want to put asphalt down that doesn't meet specs.
Bad things happen.
Then it moves into the other program of repairing streets and paving.
Yeah, because it didn't last.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so I don't have anything. We had a good meeting today about the City Hall project, as far as good of the order stuff. Just going through and understanding all of the bid items, where our goal is to talk to the finance committee in January with a plan. And we'll either, hopefully the economy continues to shine on us through the fourth quarter and in the first quarter. And if it does, and we get a good bid in March, April, then the work on City Hall could get done this year. If any of those variables
This year is 23.
next year in 23, and if economy starts to falter or the bids come in bad, then we will likely delay that project. And we want to be redoing our roof, windows and siding in the summertime. But we had a good meeting today about that, and we're going to gather all the information we got today, as well as some financing options to talk to the finance committee in January.
We had shifting some of the police department, some City Hall to.
So that lease, Charlie's, when I were talking about the lease today,
Okay.
we have those spaces if we want them. Police department's easy. It's, we know what group of employees there. I gave a deadline today. Everybody, the management team has been working on doing rock, paper, scissors on who moves. Nobody wants to move. And
Look at Brad.
because it was just like when we moved DCD over there. Is it gonna be Public Works? Is it gonna be DCD? And nobody wants, when you go somewhere else, you're not here in City Hall and all the things that are going.
Synergy of the group that got us.
Yeah, and so there's a disconnect. It happens, and yeah, well, they have.
Even talking about finances.
So, yeah.
Let's kick them out.
So what I told Cody, no, they do. Matter of fact, they had a trial here 2 weeks ago. I'm heading off to the AWC conference in the morning. And next, I said, I need an answer by Thanksgiving, who's moving over there, because I don't want to break the contract to you guys until we have a plan, who's moving over there. So if they can't decide, then I guess I'll decide.
That's where you get the big bucks. Us.
So we're working on it, and the rock, paper, scissors tournament continues this week.
Stay well, Cindy. Be
Thank
safe.
you.
Stay safe.
See you, see you next week.
All right, be safe on your trip home.
Thank you.
But yeah, $1,900 a month for the lower space, $1,700 a month for, and 3-year leases is what we're proposing. We need it at least to manage our City Hall project for the downstairs space, but we really don't, we were talking today, if we didn't grow anymore, we'd be fine. we could manage what we have. But if we don't jump on this, well, it's because it's right across the street, we'll be kicking ourselves a year or two from now, and not because we're looking at leasing a space on Bethel or down at the Cedar Heights Professional Building, and people are really disconnected then, not just across the street, so.
You would think that you could negotiate a better rate based on the fact that if we, the police department over there, they could give up on any security system that they have, they would need it. So that's a savings for them.
Because the head scratcher in this is that the police department is demanding.
Yeah, they're the most secure.
They want this, we're having to put,
They know what's on the shopping list. They want this.
yeah. Motion
Medical
detectors,
alarms.
yeah, all stuff in there, for the police department that none of the rest of us get.
Yeah.
It's little, that's a head scratcher. They got guns, why do they need all this other stuff? I don't know.
Break it from a roof for a neighboring unit.
Yeah, that's why they're on the second floor, because there's no false ceiling, there's no opportunity for that. The downstairs has false ceilings and those security concerns, so
It doesn't equate to you.
they all look at City Hall.
If you're the detectives, then nobody really can track whether you're coming or going from City Hall, kind of incognito.
Look where they are, City Hall,
Yeah.
no view.
Yeah,
Please.
yeah, down in the basement, that's right. So, anyway, we're working on it, Jay, that's the.
No, I was just, I mean, I know it's coming together.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I ask questions that we haven't heard about in a little bit of a while, but I knew forward, I was just curious.
Yeah, the intent is to have these leases to you in December. And that we would have, well, we would have access to them January 1st, but we need to buy some furniture. We need to, the big item that lead time wise anyway, is bring the fiber over there. It takes 60 to 90 days. We need.
The Wi-Fi doesn't reach.
I know I know you thought about this and.
Extension cord on the portable window.
City Hall remodel. Is it something where it can be phased, or is it really mostly exterior?
We talked about phasing today, matter of fact, and
There's
Big-
a cost to that too, I understand. that.
yeah, and it was the heating system upgrades are $1 million. And there's a mandate out there that we're on, that eventually we'd have to comply with to get off of fossil fuel. And we don't have to do that today, but the heating system in this building is horrible. And the controls, it's just not, it needs significant upgrades. We could put a $500,000 Band-Aid, to get us down the road. That's what we learned today. And that's why we had this follow-up meeting, because we're going, gosh, we could save $1 million if we just fixed the system we had. And then, but we learned
Yeah.
it's 500,000 and we don't get the energy savings because we didn't we didn't put the solar array on.
Right.
And so the solar array was $375,000, $400,000, and it has a 20-year payback. Okay, the heating system has a 20-year life and a 19-year payback, so it will pay for itself. And if we did the 500,000, it doesn't pay for itself.
Yeah.
So that's what the meeting today was about, is, what's the payback on this stuff? And it doesn't make sense to do it, because to redo the heating system, we go from, for a better term, we have boilers and chillers, and we go to a heat pump system on steroids, okay? And the coils between City Hall and over here by the well house need to be, so we have to cut the parking lot up, and so there's a lot of infrastructure that goes with it. One of the things we talked about today too was the plan, and it's a nominal savings in a 5 to 7, depending on which option we take, 5.5 million to 7.2. It had 12 charging stations out there, and we have one electric car right now. What we talked about today was we run the conduit, because we're redoing the parking lot, because we're cutting it up, for all of those charging stations, but we're 7 to 10 police cars, you know, I don't know when we're gonna move the police out of there and then I would logically, the public works would be down there and we're gonna need all charging stations down there. But what do those charging stations look like in 7 to 10 years?
Right.
We don't need it. So we're gonna put 2 double-headed charging stations along the block wall to handle our immediate need. And as we need, the panel will all be there, the conduit, if we need 1 more, 2 more, or 10 more, we just add them and it's a nominal cost because we plumbed it all for all the electrical.
We're not gonna need it for a number of years, so why buy the equipment now,
Why
when
buy
it could be outdated and all that, but.
What's the number of years? I'm curious, what you asked.
I don't, well, it's the police vehicles likely, we're buying hybrids right now. Those vehicles go home with the cops and I don't foresee us in the foreseeable future going all electric with a police car. I see that with all the rest of our vehicles, from our pickup trucks to,
The only reason I ask is, and I don't know what the projection is, but most of the major auto manufacturers have agreed to relay away from Western Indians fairly soon, so it may not be
Yeah,
an
I think the
option.
mandate's by 2030.
Is it 2030 is the
so we're gonna plumb it all.
beyond me?
And bring, you know, and we'll add them as we need them, and that could force our hand with the police department, but it's problematic right now. Police officers, you know, they drive it all day and then they wanna charge it, well, they gotta charge it at home. It requires some negotiations, contracts that we're not really.
I'll be down the road.
Yeah, so we're buying hybrid vehicles, which meets the mandates, you know, and they're more efficient. And someday I think we're gonna move the police department to a new police station, but it's not probably in my career.
Well, and we did just exactly that for buses over at Charleston. And the plumbing, the conduits is not actually the cheapest portion of the project. The charging units themselves and more expensive is the switching gear and the transformer that you have to buy. Sun Energy is really,
But our charging needs aren't as robust as a charging a bus.
no, I appreciate that, but I'm just saying relatively speaking.
Yeah.
Your conduits probably won't need to be as large as ours either, but we have the double head
Yeah,
charging units and they're not a whole lot different than what you would find it anywhere else.
it was $100,000 and we cut 50 out of it. So the conduit.
We had some savings today.
We had something, we see $50,000.
I mean, but at least you don't have to cut the road.
That was the big thing. Don't cut the parking lot out. And when we need 2 more charging stations or 10, we can just go buy them and we plug them in. And all we gotta do is pull a wire over to the brand new panel that has the capacity. It'll all be there from an electrical service standpoint. It's just putting the expensive part's done. It's just the charging station itself.
And we're putting in just enough conduits so we don't have to tear up the parking lot again, so a lot of
Yes.
this, branching out in the lawn areas, landscape areas can happen later.
In your cost benefit analysis on these different systems. You talked about a new heating system that will pay for itself in, what you say, 19 years, and the useful life is 20. What would the $500,000 Band-Aid fix? How long would that last?
10 years. Capitalize and no cost
And
savings
no cost savings.
from energy efficiency.
That's if you're lucky.
Yeah, another big ticket item was, this building and this council chambers carpet's in pretty good shape, but we have the original carpet. And for the most part, the building's never been painted on the interior. So it's $1.2 million. We have to do the shell of the building, and make it watertight. But one of the add alternates is giving the building a refresh and carpet and paint everywhere in the building. So, and this room is probably, it is the lightest used space in the building, It's used other than an occasional meeting. 3 times a month, so.
And you can thank Carolyn Powers for the carpets because she's the one that pushed through no drinking in the council chambers.
Yeah, it's,
I've certainly beat that one to death, haven't I?
this carpet has been good to us. It's 20 years old. There's some conference rooms and seams here and there that we had to make some repairs to, but it's come to its end of its.
The nice thing is if we get to, when the bids come in, if there's issues with the costs, then that's something that can be deferred and that it can be, we can go direct to vendors in the future to do that kind of work, so.
And the carpet we picked is a commercial tile type, so that spill that happens or you just, we have
So everybody
excess,
does it too.
and you take that section out.
They did that at me in Texas.
Yeah.
Pretty cool stuff.
The only problem is when you take that section out, the piece hasn't faded like everything.
That's Mexico in the sun. That's right. All right, I don't have anything else for the good of the order.
Sorry, I asked, what's the question?
That's right. I don't, went down around. So anything else for the good of the order? We are adjourned.
No.